Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tf1 show. I'm your host, Tinas Ferreira, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Will from the Formula Podcast 1, or FP1 for short, Will, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome, Will, and thank you so much for joining.
Hi, mate. I'm really happy to be here. Looking forward to it. Been a great race. So, this will be a fun chat.
I mean, was it a great race or was it a ridiculous race? Because I thought it was a ridiculous race, a race that my heart, I don't know if my heart was able to take it at the end. I told you just before we went live, I thought, after Raikkonen's tire fell off, I thought to myself, you know what? This is enough for one day. I thought this is enough drama, enough, spanners in the works for one day. I think you can just have a nice, normal, calm and relaxed finish to the race and leave it at that. But I guess that's not what happened, right? I mean, it was so action-packed, so many things to unpack. So let's maybe get straight into it. What we'll do is we'll discuss each team as we go down the grid or as we go down the order. So let's maybe start with the victors for today, which is Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas taking P1 and Lewis Hamilton taking P4. After quite a bit of things happening to poor Mr. Hamilton. Firstly, maybe, that Merc looks like it has quite a few tenths on the rest of the field. Yeah,
and that's frightening. I'll admit, 2 laps in, when you could see Bottas streaming away at the front, and I think at this point Hamilton was, fighting with Norris. I was getting 2014 vibes. I was like, oh no, please. At least in 2014, Rosberg and Hamilton, that was a really exciting battle. But from what we've seen so far, I'm still not convinced that Bottas can, give us that same consistent battle across an entire season. He usually starts seasons really well, like he has done today and like he did last year as well. But he kind of tails off, especially when he gets his contract signed. It's like he just doesn't care anymore and he kind of loses that edge on Lewis. But, it's a tricky one. I mean, hats off to Mercedes. You've got to give them that. Like, year in, year out, it's so difficult not just to win a championship, but then to keep that going. What's that, 6-7 years in a row? It's incredible engineering. So you've got to give it to them there. But it's definitely daunting for the future.
I actually think it's insane if you think about it, right? This has now been a team that's obviously dominated in the first 3 years, mainly because of the engine advantage that they had over the rest of the field. But then, 2017, 2018, I think the engine started catching up. And then all of a sudden they had to figure out a different way of beating everybody. I mean, Red Bull always used to use the excuse of saying, if only they had Mercedes' engine, they would be the fastest car on the grid because they had the best chassis. And that's not true anymore by a long stretch. Like, I think Mercedes now has the best chassis, the best engine, I think, as well. What a return to form for their engine as well. So, no, I find it incredible for them to be that far ahead at a stage where the regulations are this mature. I would have expected, or I was expecting Red Bull to actually catch up to them, especially how close they were at the end of last year. So, no, I think, from a Mercedes car perspective, a monumental achievement, I think, from the engineers. And I agree with you, actually, we're probably going to be seeing a bit of a 2014 situation where it's going to be an inter-team battle with Hamilton and Bottas for the title, because except if Red Bull puts on massive upgrades in the next couple of races, half a tenth deficit on the shortest track of the year doesn't make for positive reading if you're Christian Horner.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm in 2 minds. As someone who has also been to the Mercedes factory and has seen how they work, they are an incredibly well-oiled machine, and the way they work and the work ethic at that team is phenomenal, and they will keep pushing. They keep innovating as well. Look at the DAS system that we've got this year, and obviously it was protested by Red Bull. They've managed to find this incredibly small loophole in the regulations and kept it quiet as well. This has been obviously in the making for several years, and it took so long for them just to fine tune it to a point where it works on the car. And they brought it this year, and it's taken the paddock by complete surprise. No one else saw it in this. In these years that this regulation or this little loophole has existed, no one else has spotted it. So you've got to give it to them there. And we have a 2014 situation by the looks of things, and you're right. This is the shortest track of the year. This is where the gaps will theoretically anyway be the shortest. Oh, yeah, it is very worrying.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I guess what more can we say, right? They did an amazing job. The other teams, they need to pull up their socks. Ferrari has more money to spend. Red Bull has almost the exact same amount of money to spend compared to Mercedes. So I think people need to get off this horse of Mercedes is ruining Formula One by dominating, because the other teams aren't doing their bits, to be honest. I think, Red Bull and Ferrari, they have the capabilities of catching up. Technically, they should have more time to find than Mercedes because they're behind. So, yeah, I find it fascinating for them to be ahead this year after so many years of domination. But let's maybe move into their drivers, right? So let's maybe start with our race winner, Valtteri Bottas, pipped pole position by 12 one-thousandths of a second yesterday. New beardy lawnmower, 99 awareness superstar. What can we say? How did you rate his performance this week?
You know what? Bottas surprised me this week. I was expecting Hamilton to come in and dominate Bottas this year, but that's not happened at all. And we've seen Hamilton. I don't know. He's just not quite been on the pace. And this is a good track for Valtteri. I think he got second here back in 2014 in the Williams. And
Hamilton actually admitted it. It's one of Bottas's best tracks. Which is fair. But sorry, I interrupted. Continue.
That's right. So it is one of Bottas's best circuits, and I think again he'll be strong next week as well. But I still, despite that, expected Hamilton to come out on top with the two, and I think from a psychological point of view, Hamilton seemed to be in the place and in the right mindset, but in the end, Bottas picked him. And I do wonder how that's going to affect Hamilton a little bit and how that affects his approach into next weekend as well. And whether, Hamilton can come back. Because if Bottas starts the season with 2 wins, and especially, Hamilton, bear in mind, he finished on the track second, but was demoted to 4th at the end of the race. So, you know what? He's got to keep it clean. And otherwise, Bottas does pose the chance of really making a good start to this championship this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sort of gave me early Rosberg 2016 vibes. You know how Rosberg won like the first couple of races in a row, and then it's just sort of snowballed from there, where Hamilton was never really able to pull it back after that. And I think, obviously it's only the first race, so we can't really say that yet. But just how the things unfolded for Hamilton yesterday and today, it was sort of a bit of a series of unfortunate events for him. Like everything that could have gone wrong really went wrong for him. I mean, despite his best efforts. So Hamilton, let's maybe talk about Hamilton. Austria definitely isn't one of his best tracks. I think if you look at his record there, he won once in 2015, where they had a very dominant car. But after that, it's been a bit of a checkered history for him. Like it's not a track that he's really zoned in on, it seems. Yeah,
definitely. And you say that if you look at the last couple of laps, Hamilton really closed into Bottas, especially that last lap. And I thought we were sat there. I think the commentators forgot it was the last lap, and we're like, are they going to let Hamilton overtake so he can go into clean air and get this gap out? But then they quickly was like, hang on, actually, wait, no, the race is finished. He can't do that anymore. But I think Hamilton, he seemed to have the pace today. He was also, bear in mind, hindered by whatever issues Mercedes and, in fact, a lot of the teams across the grid were finding quite difficult today in regards to reliability. And, Austria as well, you've got to remember, is a circuit where Mercedes have not had the best reliability, especially on the engine side of things. See that double retirement in 2018. Last year wasn't particularly good. I think Hamilton finished 5th off the top of my head. And then again, this year, we saw some kind of sensor issue because they were obviously going over the curbs and that was causing vibrations. Which were messing around with the sensors and the technical equipment in the car. So I think there are other factors. I do feel like Hamilton was the quicker car today. The way he came through before that first safety car period, he was starting to cut into Bottas's lead. I think Bottas had a 7-second lead by the time Hamilton was back into second. And it was, I guess,
I think it started out at 7, and then Hamilton cut it down to 3 by the time it got to the first. Or even less than 3, maybe, before we got to the first safety car. So, no, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And, obviously he was gifted that second place due to Verstappen's engine failure. But, still, it still shows that he had the pace. And I think it was more of a matter of the dirty air becoming an issue more than, the fact that Hamilton couldn't overtake. We see in Formula 1 nowadays, and they say you've got to have about half a second's advantage to actually overtake a car. It might even be more than that, just because the dirty air limits your performance so much with these current sets of regulations. So, the fact that he was getting so close shows he was nearly there, but these guys are in the same car at the end of the day, and that makes things very, very difficult. And the Mercedes car doesn't run great in traffic anyway. It's been designed to race at the front, so overtaking that car isn't easy. So in a way, it doesn't surprise me, but I think there were glimpses of Hamilton showing that he has got the pace and he can, he could challenge Bottas, but he just wasn't really given the right opportunity with the way strategy and the safety cars played out.
Yeah, I think I have two thoughts on that before we can maybe move on. My first thought being, I think on pure pace, I think Hamilton was faster. I agree with you. I think that's partly why Hamilton was strangely sort of chill about everything that happened in the race afterwards. I think he knows, and I think he knows, Bottas knows that Hamilton was the faster car today. And I think that gives him quite a bit of confidence, given that it isn't one of his strongest tracks. And then secondly, Bottas did, I think, get a bit lucky with that first safety car, because then Mercedes had to double stack, which basically took that whole, that pit stop exchange that we typically see with the two cars, out of the equation, where, I think Hamilton was very close to Bottas at that point in time, which probably could have led to either an undercut or an overcut, depending. But I guess we'll never know. And we're playing the what if game here, so it doesn't really matter. So two things I still want to talk about with Mercedes. Firstly, I see Bronwyn and Kenny asked your thoughts on the black silver arrow. So, Will, do you want to give your thoughts on the black silver arrow?
3 words. I love it. It looks incredible. I love the meaning behind it as well. I think it's great to see a team take a really bold approach. Obviously, we've seen teams like McLaren who have slightly adjusted their livery. Renault, I think, have added a little bit to the nose cone. Racing Point have. Williams have added the rainbow as well. But, Mercedes went bold, and they are known as the Silver Arrows. That is their nickname. Their cars, we thought, were always going to be silver. So the fact that they've gone and backed one of their drivers so much on this one it's really nice to see, and it's really good to see that the team are, taking that proactive response, and they are setting things in motion to make sure that they are more of a diverse company and more of a diverse organization.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I think that's exactly what I would have said. I think the livery looks spectacular. On the track, it looks amazing. I think it looks evil, but in the best possible way. Like the car just looks evil. And even with, with Hamilton's black and purple helmet, I think it looks even better. I think, when we're going to look back on this car and this livery, it's going to be one of those iconic liveries, similar to like the Jordan one from 1991, all of those crazy famous liveries that we know. I think this is going to be one of them one day. Alrighty. So I guess the one other thing we can talk about with Mercedes is the penalty that Hamilton got, but let's maybe leave that to, the Red Bull section of this podcast, since we have lots to cover there as well. So, let's move to the next team on my list, and that is Ferrari. Now, I want to start with Ferrari, and I want to have a bit of a rant. Because after qualifying, I was so angry, principally, like out of my principles, at Ferrari as an organization. How they could possibly allow something like this to happen, where, like, I know the engine is one thing, and we can talk about the engine as well. But how, with $300 million to spend every year, they produce a car that qualified 7th and 11th. And to be honest, Leclerc's 7th was very fortunate, because a lot of the cars, I think Ricciardo behind him, actually showed better pace, if you look at Q2 and things like that. But the yellow flag basically scuppered a lot of these guys' attempts at laps. So how, if you can explain to me, how Ferrari, with $300 million, manages to produce a car that's slower than Racing Point, Red Bull, and McLaren, and it's probably equal on pace to the Renault. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think, I put a video out on this on my channel the other day, and you really got to go all the way back to January, I think, here. And there was a news story coming out from Italian media, and you've got to kind of take that with a pinch of salt. But kind of looking back now, it does make a lot of sense. But they were saying that there was an issue in Ferrari's wind tunnel. Now, we've seen this before. both Williams and McLaren in 2018 had scenarios where in their wind tunnel it was looking, as if the car was fine and dandy and everything was fine. And then when they got out onto the track, they realised, hang on a second, those numbers aren't adding up. In Williams' case, their rear wing just didn't work. It kept stalling when it was going around a corner, which is why you saw the Williams cars spinning out a lot round. I think there's Catalonia qualifying. If you watch the highlights, you can see, I think, Sirotkin going off. But, it's a very similar situation, except at least you've kind of got the caveat that Ferrari spotted it a little bit earlier. They didn't need any on-track testing, which let them change things a bit. But that's kind of led to the car becoming a bit of a mess because they don't know what values in the wind tunnel are fine and what values aren't. Now, why one of Ferrari's wind tunnels, like you said, a team which has 300 million in the bank, why they are the ones that are struggling and to have a wind tunnel that can't give them accurate data does baffle me. I just hope that this redesign in Hungary can fix that. They are hoping on completely redesign the aero, which is why they didn't have an upgrade in time for the Austrian Grand Prix. They've had to push that back in another couple of weeks. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I don't think it will give as big of a gains as they're hoping, because usually when you very quickly redesign a car, you're going to make mistakes, and especially the team haven't got full trust in their equipment anymore. It's not a great place to be, if that makes sense. So, yeah, then obviously you got the engine as well. What are your thoughts on the engine, I think?
Look,
yeah.
I have many thoughts on the engine, and I've been quite vocal about the fact that it's my favorite sort of, how can I say, off-track gossip, this Ferrari engine situation, because I'm sorry. You saw that little comparison that was going around on Twitter about, how the teams compared this year, last year, and sort of time gained and lost. You see the difference in the Ferrari cars. All the Ferrari-powered cars, Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Ferrari was like between 7/10 and a second slower this year compared to last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, but we knew there was something strange going on there, and I just wish somebody wants to open the can of worms to really. You can see like people are trying, like even the Sky panel after post race was interviewing Mattia. And like Mattia, they were prodding him, and Mattia was just not giving away anything. But like, that's just so suspicious. And I think it's actually crazy what a big difference that engine made at the end of the day. Because, like, do you think Ferrari's aero went backwards as well? Like, do you think their like downforce levels? Obviously, they say it increased this year, right? And that was sort of what they set out to do initially, to increase downforce. To help them, with tire management and through the slow speed corners and all of that. But I mean, that can't be the whole story. That's what they keep saying. That is draggy the car, but that can't be everything.
Yeah, well, first point, Austria is a power track, and it's a track where you're going to not necessarily want as much downforce, and you're going to focus more on that engine power, which is why we've seen teams like Ferrari and Alfa Romeo and Haas struggle so much. What baffles me a lot with this engine situation is I don't know what dirt Ferrari have on the FIA that means they can go and say, "Oh, guys, that just don't publish."
They must have nude photos of John Todd. It can't be anything else. It must be John Todd in a very compromising position in some hotel room.
Yeah,
it must be, because like. I can't understand, and to be honest, I think this is a whole podcast on its own potentially. But let's maybe leave it there. Ferrari has nude photos of John Todd, and that you can take as fact. All right. So let's maybe quickly talk about the drivers and maybe the race performance. So Charles Leclerc, what a guy! I mean, I was sort of thinking yesterday after the qualifying performance and everything, I was thinking this is going to test Leclerc's mettle a bit, because the Ferrari was sort of equal on pace to the McLaren and the Racing Points and even the Renaults. So Leclerc's going to have to really shine and sort of outdrive his competitors if he was to move up the field. And I think he did that. Like, that pass on Perez was like that's a textbook. Like Daniel Ricciardo would be proud of that sneak attack on the brakes. I don't know what you thought.
It was so strange to see a Ferrari had to put that much effort to overtake a Racing Point. I'm still having to adjust, I'm starting to adjust my mind to think, they are a midfield team now, which feels so weird. It's like I've taken the time machine back to 2009. But, you've got to give it to Leclerc. He came out of Q, I think it was Q2. He was like, "Oh, that was a great lap," and then he came back like, "Yeah, mate, you're 10th." He was like, "What?"
That was actually one of my favorite moments of the whole weekend, where Leclerc's like, "Oh, it's safe," and it was like, "Yes, P10," and he was like, "It's not possible. You're kidding." I put in the lap of my life, and you're telling me I'm 10.
That I think really highlighted how worrying Ferrari's pace are. We knew they were going to struggle, but we didn't think they were going to struggle this much. But, did Ferrari get that P1 pace? No, they didn't. But,
no, they got fortunate, but, you make your own luck as well.
Yeah, exactly. And especially at this point in the season, with a shortened season as well. And if they're having to get their act together later in the season, points like this and positions like this are going to really help them, when they get to that later point, there's not going to be as much damage to control, if that makes sense. They won't have lost out as many points if they can bring home these positions, like this. And it was just really weird to see, Charles struggling with the racing points, and then, Vettel, who I'm sure we'll get into in a minute, struggling to get past, I think it was Magnussen or something. I was just thinking, it's a Haas.
Yeah.
It's a Haas.
It's insane. And I think, it's going to be a mind shift, firstly. But secondly, I think the racing that we're going to have, we're going to see, because the Racing Point, McLaren, and Ferrari are like within a tenth of each other in racing. Renault as well. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. They were like neck and neck. And we'll talk about McLaren later, but it was I loved watching, it was Perez, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, lapping within a tenth of each other, lap after lap, just sort of, pushing all the time. And I think that's going to be really brilliant to see, despite the fact that we now have to consider Ferrari as a midfield team, which in itself is, let's $300 million to be a midfield team is a ridiculous sentence. And if I was a Ferrari shareholder, I would, consider investing into something less risky, explosive oil rigs or something. I don't understand what Ferrari is doing with all of that money, but that aside, let's talk about Sebastian Vettel. Now, I'm going to be honest. I am very disappointed in Sebastian because you know what? I stuck my head out for him recently. I was never that rated Vettel that highly. Let's say 2-3 years ago, I was always okay, he won 4 championships, but he has shortcomings compared to drivers like Alonso and Hamilton. But then at the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what? Maybe it was just Ferrari. Maybe Ferrari putting all this pressure on him made him lose his mind and lose his ability. And, now that he's freed of the shackles of Ferrari and Mattia Binotto, he's going to come out swinging. And, he didn't come out swinging. Why did he not come out swinging?
Yeah, I know. I was in the exact same boat as you. I was like, this could be the year where he beats Leclerc, and I feel like a bit of an idiot making that comment. Now I can see in the live comments we've got Bosson's mate. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think I saw him comment on one of my videos the other day as well. But good to have you here. He said the Ferrari aero package is a rear parachute. I think with Vettel, he was more of a ballistic missile when he was trying to take Sainz.
What is he doing?
I honestly,
and then of course he did his signature spin as well. I was just thinking, you can't script this. How is it with every single on-track incident Vettel has? It can be an overtake, it can be a gust of wind. He always ends up spinning around. It's like he writes his own movie.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'll admit, when I first watched that and watching it live, I don't know whether part of it just the guy in me that wanted Vettel to do well this season was like, Sainz turned across him. I watched the replay. I was like, no, okay, that's
no, he didn't. Sainz was already past the apex, and then Vettel was like, ooh, the inside, let's do it.
Yeah, that looks like a gap. Oh, hang on, no, it isn't. And then, I think he was going to spin whether he hit Sainz or not. By the time he'd kind of gone in, he was almost in the half spin, corrected it, and then tapped Sainz. So, yeah, it was a clumsy move, not one that would be usually associated with a 4-time world champion as well. And yeah, his race wasn't great, beyond that as well.
No, I think he had damage.
Maybe that
wind damage because of the incident. But I think, and never before to me has the contrast between Vettel and Leclerc has it been this apparent, to be honest. And I feel Vettel's shortcomings has been highlighted so strongly in today's race. Just like, look at Leclerc's pass on Perez at exactly the same place, also late on the brakes, late lunge, versus Vettel's attempt on Sainz. And then you realize that, racecraft was never Vettel's forte. And, with Ferrari being where they are, I think this is going to be a horrible season for Vettel because he's never been the guy fighting through the pack, making the daring overtakes and somehow, moving up like that. He's been the guy putting in the very fast qualifying lap, starting on pole and then just driving off in the distance. And I don't think it's going to be able to do that. So yeah, my expectations for Vettel has dimmed quite profusely. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I think, just maybe it's part of me going back to 2019 because, back in 2019, he'd have that spin, but he'd still make it up to at least P6. This year, you can't do that anymore because, the rest of the midfield appears anyway to have caught up. And to be fair, even the Red Bulls seem to be more kind of with that midfield group. Not
Red Bull seems closer to McLaren than what they do to Mercedes, which is
exactly
but
weird.
So maybe let's move on to Red Bull, given that we've been stuck on Mercedes and Ferrari for quite a while. So Red Bull, I think they're probably, deep down, when Christian Horner goes to his hotel room and he closes the door and he locks the hotel room door and he goes, and he's in the shower and in his most, secretive of moments, Christian Horner is devastated, I think, at how far Mercedes is ahead of Red Bull because they've been, they've been smugly confident. They kept, when we asked them questions or when they asked them questions about their car, they always had that, that bit of a smug look on their face, like, we know something you don't. And like, I just think they're very disappointed. And I think that definitely must have led to all of the ridiculous protests we saw over the weekend. Now, look, I don't really want to talk about the DAS protest because we knew it was coming, right? But that's the second protest. The more I think about it, actually, you know what? I was initially, before the race, I was like, how petty can you be, right? Like they're just being really opportunistic doing this right before the race. Now it turns out that footage that Red Bull used as additional information only became available this morning, which is fair enough. And I guess, you're a racing team, so you should take the opportunity. So actually, maybe, not too upset about that, but karma gave them a big slap, for their trouble, a couple of laps in.
I think karma did just slightly threw him off a cliff today, I think,
Yeah.
It was, I'll admit, I've seen the footage now as well, and I can see why Hamilton was given the penalty. Yes, that yellow flag mark was apparent, but why was that yellow flag marker all the way off on the other side of the gravel trap?
It was literally like I literally would not have seen it. No way I would have seen it.
The only person who's seen that is Valtteri Bottas. He's going, right, I know what that yellow flag's there for. It's me.
It was parked right in front of the yellow flag board. So.
So for me, it's also a case of why is the track designed like that? Surely you'd have the yellow flag marker on the other side of the circuit. Maybe it was. Maybe I didn't see that. But the other thing,
no, the next marker was actually green. So the one on that side of the circuit was green, which is why the stewards gave Hamilton the benefit of the doubt initially, where they told him, well, there was conflicting messaging, with the one showing yellow and the other showing green. So that's why he got off. But you know what? I guess such is life. I don't feel too strongly about the penalty in itself. I just think it could have been handled much better. I think the fact that the FIA doesn't have that video footage available to them directly after qualifying, I think is silly.
Yeah,
and I also think what's silly is the fact that Hamilton's other lap got deleted 3 hours after the race, even though they put all their sensors there to detect whether the car is within or outside of the track limits. So I don't get that. So questions there, I guess. Yeah, you know what? Let bygones be bygones, I guess. But I just wish there was a bit more consistency or a bit more rigor with things like this. And talking about consistency and rigor, Will, Alex Albon down on turn 4, around the outside of Lewis Hamilton, spins around, a spin Vettel would be proud of. And what's your thoughts? Penalty, yes, no?
Yes, definitely. I think, I was talking to you during the race, and I put a message out there on our group chat, and I was like, you know what? Can you imagine? This was when the Mercedes were about 10 seconds in front. I was like, can you imagine if the Mercs lap Albon and Hamilton takes him out again? Yeah, I didn't think I'd be right in saying that. I was sort of half right. You didn't have to lap him. I can see both sides of it in that, you watch it back. Albon was ahead by about, half a car length.
More than half a car length. I think, his outs. I think his rear tires was sort of aligned with Hamilton's front tires, if I remember correctly. But yeah, no, definitely ahead in the corner.
Yeah, and for Hamilton, looking at it, and I was like, bear in mind that it's kind of like the whole Vettel Canada situation last year. We are talking about literally milliseconds worth of time to react to this sort of thing. So it can be quite harsh to kind of slow everything down and break it down. But, what you've got to look at here is, I think even if Hamilton had backed out, he would have still clipped Albon a little bit. I think once Albon was going around the outside, and once Hamilton was turned in, he was full lock. He wasn't going to be able to, and he was kind of steering out of the corner. He was running out of road.
Yeah.
He was basically on the racing line, really, and Albon was going to settle on the outside. The contact was inevitable. Do I still think the penalty should have been applied because of that? I mean, you could argue because that contact was going to happen no matter what Hamilton did. Maybe it's a racing incident, but for me, I still feel like perhaps Hamilton could have backed out of it sooner. I really don't know. I still need to go back and watch it a couple more times, but I'm going to say penalty for now.
So I think it's close to me because, the fact that Hamilton, it was just after the safety car restart, the millionth safety car restart, and Hamilton was on cold, worn, hard tires. So, and the thing is, on corner entry, Albon wasn't ahead of Hamilton yet. So Hamilton was still thinking, okay, let me make the corner. Obviously, Albon with a lot more grip on the outside. A bit of a brave move. Like, around the outside there on turn 4, it's always going to be, you're going to be putting yourself at risk. Doesn't matter what the guy on the inside does. And I do agree with you. Hamilton was full lock. It's not like he tried to squeeze Albon off the track like you can think about what he used to do to Nico Rosberg. I don't think it was anything like that. But I think he understeered wide on cold tires. Whether he could have done more to avoid that, potentially. I think that's maybe why they gave him the penalty, because they said, you know what, Albon was sufficiently far ahead in the corner to basically force Hamilton to take evasive action. It wasn't like Hamilton was a sitting duck. So no, I think I agree. I'm on the fence, but you know what? Let's be strict and give Hamilton the penalty. What's done is done. I don't think he seemed too upset about it afterwards, which I think tells you that he probably feels there's a realm where he would find that plausible. So, gutting for Alex. Like, I really like him. I think he had a very good race, I think, in total. I think maybe not as fast as Max yet in race pace, but I think much better than Gasly. I think, Alex was in a very good position to win the race, and I don't think Gasly would have been. I think Gasly would have been stuck somewhere behind Norris trying to overtake him. That was just the sort of thing that used to happen. Your thoughts on Albon's race?
Albon, I feel bad for him. I mean, you make a very good point about Gasly, and I agree with you on that one as well. I think, especially now that the field is a lot tighter, and like you said, you think Gasly would be sat there back with the racing points, and he would be now, because he hasn't got that margin. Before, last year, Red Bull was still the third fastest team. There's still a big gap before you hit the Renaults and McLarens and Racing Points. Now, that gap is a lot smaller, almost non-existent, and we saw, Norris out-qualified Albon. Now, yeah, the yellow flag helped there, but still, on the first runs, he still got ahead. So, it's a tough one. And I think Albon, once he got into the actual race situation, he drove a perfect race. I don't think he put a foot wrong. And some people said, should Albon have been on the outside overtaking Hamilton? No, Albon was fully in his right to get there. And, I'm saying in the comments as well, why didn't Merc pit for new tyres? I don't know, to be honest. And that's what really gave Albon the
I actually know the answer to this question. And that's because, and I'm assuming we're talking about that first safety car.
I think it was the last one.
The second safety car. No, so the safety car where Albon put on the soft tires and Leclerc and Loris and Sainz all put on the new mediums. So it was the timing of the actual safety car where both Hamilton and Bottas was already past the pit entry by the time the safety car was called. And then it was basically just perfect timing for everybody behind them. So then Albon, Norris, Leclerc, and Perez stayed out, I think, because he won a track position. But that's why. So they had to do a full another revolution of the lap before they could pit for the new tires. And at that point, the grid was already bunched up, or they would have already intercepted the safety car, which then would have meant they probably would have lost position. So that was basically what happened. So and an interesting one.
Because I think, had there not been that clash, I wonder if Albon could have done what Danny Rick did in China a couple of years back. I think it was the two Toro Rossos that collided. Then the Mercs were past the pits, and both Red Bulls dived in. Obviously,
that's exactly, I think, what they did, and that's why we had the two Mercs on the older hards and Albon on the new softs, which I think would have probably set up Albon for the race win, except it didn't end up happening like that. But maybe last thoughts on Red Bull. I think second fastest car on the grid. Very, very, very sad for Albon. I think Albon starts coming into his own a bit more over time. I think he's probably even going to be much better next week again in Austria. I think he's let's say potential of improvement is much, much bigger than some of the other guys, just because he's never driven around Austria and Red Bull before. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can improve next week.
That's a good point. I think we saw Albon building concept through his time at Red Bull last year as well. And I think I agree with you. I think he'll get there. He'll get that podium. He will, and when he does, he'll get a hell of a lot of support on Twitter. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I will give him all of the support. I'll even shed a tear in solidarity with Alex Albon's podium. Let me tell you. Alrighty, so we've been going for quite a while. So maybe in the interest of time, let's talk about McLaren and Racing Point. So McLaren had an excellent outing in the race. I think they're probably the team that's happiest out of all of the teams after this race. A podium for Lando Norris, the first podium. Carlos Sainz coming home in fifth place. A good performance for him after a difficult weekend. Racing Points, similar to McLaren, very similar in pace. I think they were maybe slightly ahead in qualifying. The pink Mercedes doing all of the things that they'd set out for it to do. Lance Stroll had a bit of a tough outing today in the race with reliability, and I think Perez just ran out of tires at the end.
I'm not sure what happened to Perez, to be honest. He was right on there, and then I was almost surprised to see Norris getting back through. I was like, I thought there might have been a sensor issue.
Almost ended in tears is all I'm saying. But
it was because it was very similar to the Leclerc Verstappen move from last year, wasn't it? Where he came through a little bit. I think there was a little bit more front wing contact. I thought he might have lost an end plate there. But thankfully he didn't in the end. But I think Norris drove an excellent race. Perez did really well right until the end. He was on those mediums, wasn't he? So maybe tyres falling off, that does make sense. Because I think he pitted for the safety car, didn't he? And then didn't change tyres after that.
Yes, exactly. So everybody else put on hards, and Racing Point was like, no, but we have the tyre meister. the tire maestro, Sergio Perez in our team. So we're going to put him on mediums and, see if he can make it last to the end. And he did. He did make it last to the end. But I just think after, Leclerc and Norris and Sainz all put on new mediums after the third safety car, then his advantage was basically nullified. So that's basically what happened there. But still, a good performance for Racing Point overall. McLaren on par with Ferrari, cracking racing. I just want, and we saw sort of indications of it here and there, but I want Leclerc and Sainz to go head to head this year for every race. Yeah, Sainz going to come to Ferrari next year. I think he wants to, stamp his authority, onto that team as well. So really looking forward to that. And I think the midfield's going to be brilliant. Maybe last shout out just to Norris for firstly, an excellent qualifying lap. I mean, that was an insane lap from him. And then secondly, that last final lap he did in the race to get under 5 seconds compared to Hamilton was also sure that he's seriously fast. He's a fast guy.
Exactly. Lando, that last lap I wasn't expecting, and I was looking at the time. I thought, it'd be amazing with this 5-second penalty that Hamilton's got for landing up the podium, but I think he'll just miss out. And that last lap came out of nowhere. And coming into this race, when I realised that Lando was going to line up P3. Lando was great around one lap, and he can pull off some brilliant attacking moves, but he's always struggled with defending his position. And we saw that quite a lot. He kind of just let Verstappen by, and he let Hamilton by as well at the start. He was getting better as the race went on, but for me, I think he gave up his first positions a little bit too easily. And I
was disappointed in the Leclerc overtake over Norris. I think Norris was a bit too kind. Well, I mean, Leclerc also went for the outside of turn 4 thing that Alex Albon went for. And Norris basically did what Hamilton was supposed to do, I think. So I would have liked Norris to be a bit more robust there, because I think, I think that's maybe the one area where there's a bit of doubt still compared to Sainz, because I think Sainz is quite a hard racer. Like, I think it's quite difficult to get one over Sainz. So, I think, but great performance for Norris, and so nice to see him on the podium. So well deserved. And let's maybe move on to the next couple of teams. So Renault, not much to say about Renault, to be honest. Daniel Ricciardo was actually going quite well this weekend, but got unlucky with reliability. Ocon had a tough time in quali. Like, he was way down on Ricciardo and couldn't really figure out why. And was a bit better in the race. I think fought back quite nicely, was consistent and was showing good pace, I think, trying to get past the AlphaTauris. But I think Renault will be satisfied with their performance, but not satisfied with execution. That's probably what my conclusion would be there.
Yeah, I think Ocon, after qualifying, I think we were a little bit underwhelmed, and we were a little bit like, oh, okay, there's all this hype. This was the guy that was tipped for a Mercedes seat this year, right? Before obviously Bottas was retained. So we were kind of expecting a little bit more than what we actually saw. And I think, this kind of proves that perhaps Mercedes might have made it is early days, but it does kind of prove that maybe Mercedes made the right choice in sticking with Bottas, given the fact that he won the race and, Ocon with that year out. And he didn't do much in his year out. I don't think he raced any official series
in that
year out of Formula 1. So,
for Mercedes.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed with Ocon. You're right, he did bring it back in the race, but I'm still not convinced. And he's one of those drivers that I think we need to keep quite an eye on. Renault aren't going to drop him because he's French and he's got a 2-year contract, but he's definitely something to keep an eye on. Make sure that this was more of a one-off, and it's just rustiness, and he brings that back, if you know what I mean. Because he can't be affording to take in those qualifiers. He's not going to get. Had we not had all the reliability issues today, I don't think Ocon would have got into the points. I think he was going to get to that 8th place finish. So I think Ocon is going to make sure he can get that qualifying pace up to what Ricciardo was managing, because Ricciardo could have done sort of P7, something like that, P7, P8.
I was tipping Ricciardo for anywhere from P5 to P7.
Exactly, that Renault looked quick.
End up, and look, I actually like Ocon. I rate him quite a lot. I thought he was very good in his days in Force India. I don't want to write him off yet, because it could be so many things that could have made his life difficult. If you think back to, he's essentially back in the Formula One car for the first time since Racing Point in 2018, and it's a whole new different sort of aerodynamic philosophy compared to the really complicated front wings that we had, that year. So I want to give him 2 or 3 races to just bed in or settle in. What I told myself, given that I like Ocon, what I told myself after yesterday, I was like, you know what? If you remember, Leclerc, his first race in Australia, or his first couple of races at Sauber, he also wasn't lighting it up. He was also struggling a lot, and he got it together, I think, was it in Azerbaijan after, a couple of races. So I hope Ocon does the same, because otherwise, he can't keep that deficit to Ricciardo as is, because that would spell, his doom, to put it lightly. Okay, cool. Let's talk about AlphaTauri, Haas, and Alfa Romeo. Now, AlphaTauri, I thought about AlphaTauri, I think, 3 times this entire weekend.
Yeah, they were that kind of, I don't know, unknown entity coming into it. Didn't really know where they were. There was quite a lot of talk saying, they're no longer the junior team, they're the sister team. Yeah. That didn't really go in tested. They were just, Toro Rosso with a different coat of paint.
Yeah, and, we also said Red Bull was going to win the Constructors' Championship this year. So.
I also said that Vettel was going to challenge the Drivers' Championship. So, I was completely wrong. So
why are we even doing this? Why are we even doing this podcast? Because obviously we know nothing about Formula One.
Exactly. I'm just an idiot at the end of the day. I just sit there and shout about Formula One and think I know everything. But before, obviously, was it Kvyat had his tyre blow up at the end? They were going for I think it was P7, P8 finish.
They were living their best lives.
Yeah, and obviously, Gasly took home that P7. It was a shame for Kvyat. It was. I think again that was caused by curbs, or I think they were. Did he not have contact with someone earlier in the lap? I might be wrong on that one, but
I actually, you see, the thing is, literally didn't even notice Kvyat was gone until I saw the replay of his tire blowing up. It didn't register in my mind that something happened to Daniel Kvyat. That's how little I was paying attention to AlphaTauri, and I take full, blame for that. But yeah, they look fine. I think they look slower than the other, slower than Renault, McLaren, and Ferrari, and Racing Point, the midfield teams, but faster than Haas and what do you call it, Williams, and Alfa Romeo. So Alfa Romeo, they had quite a rough time. The engine was slow, their car was slow, Kimi was grumpy, Giovinazzi was Giovinazzi. Although, Giovinazzi did get a point at the end of the day. I think he came 9th, so that's fine. He did. Right? Look at you, Antonio Giovinazzi, almost scoring the same amount of points you scored during the whole of 2019, which I think is a step in the right direction. But, I don't know if you have any specific thoughts about Alpha. I thought Kimi's wheel falling off was ridiculous. But other than that, again, not really much to say. Like, not much insight for me to give.
I think there was so much focus on the midfield, and strangely, Carlos Sainz. He was in the broadcast for once, but there was so much focus on them. I think I saw the Alfa Romeos once before, obviously Kimi's tyre decided to bugger off. But Gio is a bit of a weird one for me. I think there are better drivers that could be put in that car, and especially next year.
Like, if I was Antonio Giovinazzi and I watched yesterday's Formula 2 race, I would be more depressed than Christian Horner. Like, literally, Armstrong, Schwartzman, Schumacher.
Schumacher was doing well before he went to the gravel, yeah.
All of those guys are insanely good. Like, I've turned into an Armstrong fanboy today, like, after today's race. I think he's going to be so good. But let's maybe not talk about Formula 2 now. But, Giovinazzi, you'd have to shoot the lights out this year, I think, to keep that seat, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, though him and Raikkonen were kind of trading positions. I think the only way Gio can keep that seat is if Raikkonen retires, which we are kind of expecting him to, though he might stay on, we don't know. And then Alfa want to have an experienced hand. Now, would you call Giovinazzi an experienced driver? No, but... if I were them, I would have put someone like Schumacher and Schwartzman, or Armstrong and Schwartzman, or 2 Ferrari juniors in that car instead.
You know what? Take a chance. put them in and see what happens at this point. It's not like Alfa Romeo. It's not like they are improving under Raikkonen's guidance and tutelage. It feels like to me.
That's
it's not
true.
Like they've progressed leaps and bounds in terms of development, direction, or setup, or anything like that.
If they've fallen behind, go back to 2018, with Leclerc. And yes, okay, exactly. Leclerc is a special driver, but Ericsson was doing bits in that car as well that year.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that. And kind of since then, I would have said it was the other cars catching up, but looking at obviously the engine performance data that came out, it looks more like they've been falling behind more than anything.
No, definitely. So that's why I'm saying, Ferrari has this incredible pool of talent. Get Schwartzman and Armstrong in that Alpha, or Schumacher, because they're going to put Schumacher in there. But I think it's time for a change. And, Antonio Giovinazzi is a nice guy. He's a nice driver. But, you don't have that much time to poodle about and not really make an impact. And I haven't really seen that impactful race. I think if you look back at the really good drivers, we all can remember one or two races where they really made an impact. And Giovinazzi just hasn't had that yet. So maybe he does still have it this year, and we can have this conversation again. But at this point in time, I don't know. I don't think it's looking good. And talking about not looking good, we have Haas and Roman Grosjean. Now,
yeah,
similar to Vettel, Roman Grosjean, you have this, you have stereotypes, right? And I always say you have stereotypes for a reason. And Grosjean, again, people keep saying, no, we mustn't be mean to Grosjean, and we must respect Grosjean and put respect on his name. But I'm sorry. Did you see what he was up to that whole race? Literally, whenever we was cutting away, you just saw a cloud of dust and Grosjean in the gravel. Without any, provocation, without any reason. Well, maybe the last one was a good reason, but I don't know what Grosjean was doing. I was just laughing to myself.
I wasn't just laughing to myself. I was absolutely in tears when I saw Grosjean spinning. And I was taking the mick out of a few Grosjean fans as well. But, like Roman, he's a nice guy, but he's past his peak in Formula 1. Bear in mind, he's been racing in Formula 1 since 2009. He came in for a few races for Renault, then didn't come back obviously till 2012 with Lotus. But just for me, Grosjean had his peak in I want to say 2012, but that was an interesting year. But 2013, he was picking up a few podiums, and maybe up to 2015, obviously that was harder to show with the fact that Lotus's pace had kind of dropped off by that point. And he did get that podium obviously in Spa that year, but for me, Grosjean, he should have probably been kicked out of Haas a couple of years ago. And I think now, if Haas don't decide to put that all together, they will go for someone like Delatraz, or they'll go for maybe an Enzo Fittipaldi, someone else in that seat.
They must just put the third Ferrari Junior in there. So
that works.
We must revamp the whole Alfa Romeo team, and put whichever drivers left over, put him in Grosjean's seat in the Haas. That's my perfect plan for Ferrari domination 2025. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. You know what? Ferrari just need to get a Haas. I'm like, mate, look, listen, we'll give you our breaks. If you take one of our Ferrari juniors, then they'll be fine. Haas will be like, breaks. Ferrari, I'll take that.
Ferrari will. You know what Ferrari needs to do? So they can give Haas their breaks, and they'll say they can go back to last year's engine.
Yeah,
then
they can.
That's all they need to do. And then Haas is, watch Haas competing with Red Bull again. That's what we're going to be seeing. So, Haas had struggles on the brakes, similar to Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen, he had a good race, I think a decent race, basically holding off Ocon for the majority of it until he got brake troubles. Haas, just mediocre. That's probably the word I'd use to describe them. I think if they don't improve, it's going to be hard to make a case for them to be in the sport for much longer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Haas, they've struggled, and especially kind of since the whole Rich Energy fiasco, even before then, really before that, where they had their brake problems before. It's kind of weird to see these cropping up again. We were talking before we went live today about it, and we thought these brake problems were solved. So why have they come back, and how have they come back? If you start making the same mistake multiple times, especially in Formula 1, it's the telltale signs of insanity, isn't it? So I don't really know what they're doing, what they're playing at the moment, but they've really kind of got to get their finger out. Otherwise, they will fall behind Williams at this rate.
Yeah.
This race really has to away, because this kind of race was the kind of opportunity where they could take really important points. And, teams like Renault with Ocon in 8th, AlphaTauri with Gasly in 7th, someone like Alfa Romeo as well with Giovinazzi taking 9th. These points are going to be very, very useful in the lower tier, of the Constructors' Championships. And really, this was a race where they should have capitalised, and they could have capitalised. I think, Magnussen had an incredible start. He started back behind Grosjean in P16 or 17. By the end of the first couple of laps, he was 13th. And I was saying, wow, Magnussen's done all right. And no one's talked about
Magnussen. He's a decent driver. That's why I'm still saying if we keep Magnussen, but Grosjean needs to go. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Grosjean got lucky in quali and then just fell away in the race and just decided to put on his Sebastian Vettel cap and spin everywhere for the rest of his time.
He was going on scenic tours like on the outskirts of the track. And I mean, it was ridiculous. And
he thought he was still in lockdown. He was going to the beach and the gravel and just thought, I'll have a little gander through here.
Expecting Bottas's lawn mowing from the day before. That
has the speed of a lawnmower. But
let's see if we can get through. Get past Williams before the hour is up. So we have Williams at the back still, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And Russell, desperately unlucky. He drove such a good race today. He was ahead of both Alphas and a Haas at one point. And just, such a good effort. Latifi, he tried. Latifi has a way to go still. Hopefully he can figure things out. I think it's going to take a bit of time. But Russell really put some respect on his name. I think he deserves a much, much better car.
Yeah, Russell should have got points today. Had he not had that issue, I genuinely believe he would have got ahead of someone like Giovinazzi easily. Maybe even Vettel at the rate he was in that car, And he would have taken over P9 or P10.
Imagine the scenes. Russell taking Vettel in the Ferrari.
That would be incredible. It would take me back to the 90s and the 80s. But, there is light in the tunnel, like you said. And, I was very impressed by Williams' pace. Latifi, I was quite harsh at the beginning of the weekend. Obviously, that crash in FP3. He was way off the pace in quali, but it is his first weekend in Formula One. You've got to give him that. You've got to give him that kind of time to adjust to this radically different environment. Bear in mind, he's gone from winning races in F2 to being in still probably the slowest car in Formula One. So you've got to give him that time to adjust, and it will take him a few races. If we're still having this conversation by the end of Silverstone, then we should be a little bit worried. But right now, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and kind of hope he comes back stronger next week.
No, I agree 100%. And I think, let's maybe conclude our little piece on all of the teams. I think we've discussed all of them comprehensively and given all of our many, many, many thoughts. Let's maybe move on to the last little segment that we have in race reviews such as these, and that is the Tf1 Awards. Now, there are 3 awards that we typically hand out during a race weekend, and the first of that being the Pastinaldo Nardo Award of the most dunderheaded deed of the weekend. Now, my thoughts are that this prize or this award should go to Ferrari and Mattia Binotto. That would be my nomination for the Pastor Maldonado Award, just for pitching up with a $300 million car and qualifying in 7th and 11th. That would be my pick.
Yeah, that is a good pick. I'm torn between 2. I go firstly, Red Bull for, being quite petty over the course of the entire weekend and just protesting absolutely everything and throwing their toys at the pram. But I'm going to give it to Sebastian Vettel for that move on Sainz. I'm sorry. I looked at that and I thought, of all the drivers to hit as well, you've got to hit the guy that's going to be replacing you it was like 12 months' time.
The irony in that, the irony in all of that was just too much. He hits the guy replacing him in a Ferrari for 8th place. He spun. He couldn't have scripted it better. So I think I agree with you on that. I think we need to give it to Sebastian Vettel and his magnificent overtake attempt on Carlos Sainz. All right. So the next award is the Lewis Hamilton #Blessed Award for luckiest driver during the weekend. And for me, is a tie between Norris and Charles Leclerc, just because, I mean, they got a podium and it was wonderful and very exciting to see, but they benefited from Max Verstappen retiring, Alex Albon retiring, Lewis Hamilton getting a 5-second penalty. So I don't know if there was anything else happening. Sergio Perez running out of tires, I think. But, great. And as we did say that both of them put in very good drives and good performances, but fortunate still, I think, to end up on the podium.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of stick on that same wavelength. I think for Norris, I wouldn't give him the lucky award because I feel like most of his pace was genuine. Yeah, okay, he got onto the podium because of that penalty. But for me, Leclerc's got to take the luckiest award on my end, just because, while McLaren, they probably had a car that could challenge the podium on a good day like today. Ferrari came into the weekend and especially showed in qualifying they had no chance or very little chance of getting anywhere near the top 3 position. So the fact that Leclerc got second in the end shows his...
It's insane, actually, yeah. It definitely shows his driving ability. He made his own luck to an extent, and he put himself in a position to benefit. So, no, I agree 100%. Alrighty. Then the last award is the Nico Hülkenberg Podium Award for unluckiest driver. And to me, that's a slam dunk Alex Albon. I don't think there's anybody that was unluckier during this weekend to have the exact same thing happen to what happened to him in Brazil. Same driver, same type of overtake scenario, same outcome. It's just heartbreaking to see. And I was so sad for him after the race, watching that interview. Yeah. It was devastating.
I'm glad you brought this back up because just looking back through the comments, and Bosens has come out and said that both McLaren podiums have been due to a Hamilton-Albon collision. Which is true. It's
crazy.
It's crazy. It was a bit like every time Kvyat got demoted, Verstappen would win a race, which is what happened back in the day. But I think I've got to agree with you. It's got to be Albon. I mean, I can't think of anyone else to give it to be honest. He should have got that podium set. He could even have got the win. I think he drove the socks off that Red Bull, and yes, he was benefited by the fact that the Mercedes was struggling towards the end of that race, but. I just feel so bad for him. I think he'll get that podium. He will get that podium. Thinking we said about Hülkenberg, but no, he will get that podium. It'll just take time and maybe Hamilton to retire early.
Well, I think that's the perfect point to end it off on. I think the best part of all of this is next week we get to do it all. We get to do it all over again. Another Austrian Grand Prix, or I think it's called the Styrian Grand Prix next week. But I'm going to be fascinated to see how all of the teams crunch the numbers from this weekend, try and improve based off all of the information that they now have. And to see the pecking order next week is going to be very, very interesting. Will, thanks so much for joining. To all of you guys listening out there, please go and look at his YouTube channel. He's, I think I've linked him in the description to this video as well. Go check him out. He has brilliant content. He's a recent video on Ferrari and Ferrari's troubles has been, it's such a good video. So I really do encourage you guys to go and look at it. It's brilliant in every way. And, Will, if you maybe want to tell the ladies and gentlemen how they can find you on Twitter as well, maybe just give them your Twitter handle so they can go look for you.
Yeah, firstly, you're bigging up my ego to scary levels here, mate. But, I'm at WillOld2000 on Twitter as well. Trying to use that a little bit more. So, if you want to get in contact with me there, just pop me a message. And yeah, I'm always happy to talk about F1 as well. So it'll be good to kind of see a few of you over there. But if you like Formula One, if you like the technical side of things as well, then definitely consider checking me out.
Cool. Yeah, no, brilliant. Guys, definitely worth to check out. And you can all follow me on Twitter as well. So my handle there is @Tf1 Show. And if you enjoy this podcast, please give us a like or a comment or even a subscribe if you're feeling really generous. And I'm definitely going to be back soon with more interviews, more content. And I'll definitely have you back on as soon as possible as well. So thank you, everybody. And enjoy the rest of your evening and see you guys next week.